All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our monthly Working in UX Design session. Tonight, we have a live guest with us. So it's exciting to have all of you here. So for those of you who are in the live audience, can you do me a favor by sharing with me in chat, where are you coming from, right? Where are you dialing from today? It'll be nice to know the countries that are included in today's event. And my name is Dalen, and I'm the founder of CuriousCore, and we help mid-career professionals to transition into the field of user experience design and product management. And today we have one of our very Ning, who is working as a senior UX designer at OCBC Bank. And we will be having her share with us about inclusivity in UX design. And Ning is someone who is always very, very passionate about accessibility and the element of accessibility in UX design. So I think it'll be a very, very interesting event where we can ask her more questions about it, especially in banking, which is something we all experience. And moreover, has also worked in companies like HReasily, as well as Chope, as a designer. So welcome, Ning, to our live session. Hope all is good over there. How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here today. Yeah, hi everybody as well.
Awesome, awesome. Wow, we have so many audiences from Singapore, Malaysia, and India. That's awesome. And I was just wondering, can you just share a little bit more about this topic on accessibility and why are you so passionate about it? Like, I started to notice you getting interested when you were in our program. So I'm just curious, like, what got you so interested in accessibility? Yeah.
Right. I think for me, it really stems from experiences that I've gone through since I was really young. I come from a family that is very academically driven, and I remember all I wanted to do was to draw. So I have always been that black sheep in the family, right? And being the black sheep, you definitely feel like an outcast, and you start to be aware of feelings that are conjured up in you at that very young age. And I think I'm not sure whether the word fortunate is the correct word to use here, but I think I was made aware of invisible impairment since I was very young as well, because my mom has growing up, my mom has an anxiety disorder. So I know that there are days where she looked fine. She looked perfectly fine with makeup on and, with her office suit and stuff, but she is battling with panic attack inside. Yeah, so I think being able to empathize, knowing that at a young age, kind of really shed light on the topic for me. And I think this is important to bring, to be made aware of in society. And I think further on that topic, right, growing up, I made friends with Teresa Gold. So just a little bit of context on who she is. She's actually a Paralympian swimmer. And I think being friends with her and hanging out with her and having conversations with her really changed my whole perspective on accessibility. She, for me, right, is somebody that is really strong and challenges the notion of of a disabled person in society. And I think that really shed light on how things can actually be designed inclusively for everybody and not just a specific user group. Yeah, so I think for me, usability really stems from a place of concern. How technology is advancing so quickly, but yet we are leaving certain groups of people behind. We tend to actually tag products to able-bodied people and leave the others out. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing it so openly and warmly about mom as well. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And I'm sure some of us here in the audience may be able to relate to that condition. And I think there's something very interesting on your LinkedIn profile where you put yourself as like a design ally. So you put like a 1-1 under the word. I'm wondering what's the deeper meaning behind that? Yeah.
So actually that's a a tech code for accessibility. So that's what they do in engineering, right? And I think with that, it's also a symbol of I am part of an advocate that advocates for accessibility. Yeah, and I'm really proud of that. And I think that more people should come on board if you feel that you are concerned and it stems from a place of genuine care, then feel free to join the advocates, the accessibility advocates, because we do need more people out there spreading the good word. Yeah.
Wow. So if I'm interested and let's say I'm inspired by your story this evening, where can I go? What should I do to find out more about how to be an advocate? Yeah.
Right. I think to start off, right, you can actually go online, have a search on WCAG, which is the Web Content Accessibility Guideline. I think as designers or inspiring designers, the guidelines there are sort of our Bible in that sense on how to create designs, or rather systems that are inclusively designed. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of topics about contrast. There's a lot of topics about how colors, for example, shouldn't be used as the sole indicator of something that is in focus. And I think on this topic, right, I was on LinkedIn this morning and I saw a post posted by a designer. So it was one of those posts that, ask you to vote for the design that matters to you. And the first design, so it's a menu. So this is basically a menu, and I think there's like 3 options there. So for example, home, notification, and account, right? So the home is active, is selected, and it has, the first design has a line under the word home. The second design, same options, but it has a little indicator on the side of home. So it's basically horizontal and vertical. And people were voting in the comments. And someone who commented actually gave his idea of what the ideal design should be like. And basically he has removed the indicator, the little rectangle from the side and the bottom, and he says that this is the best design. And that particular post actually garnered about 200 likes, that particular comment, sorry. Yeah, and as I was scrolling further in the comments, right, there was a PM who commented about how this just violated the whole WCAG guidelines, because color shouldn't be used as the sole indicator of something that's selected. Yeah, so in this case, is the menu inclusively designed? I don't think so. If somebody has low vision or can't really perceive color properly in that sense, right? So color blindness, they might not be able to see that the first option is selected. Yeah, so keeping in mind such guidelines do help us to become better designers. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So like as designers, we should be aware that color shouldn't be the only thing that we should be using to help improve accessibility. There should be other things to consider as well. Do you have good examples of apps or websites who have done accessibility right or have done it very well?
So I did a mini project, a private mini project before, and I was speaking to several blind users, and I was asking them what their preferred platform is. So it's not exactly an app, but I think a lot of them are actually Apple users. And I think it makes sense because Apple was the first one who came out and said that my platform should be accessible, and there isn't a way. When they came up to say that, right, there isn't any guidelines on how you should make things accessible. They champion it. So I think in that sense, Apple managed to capture a large part of people with impairments that are leveraging on their system to make their everyday life better. Yeah. Sorry, can I get back to the question that you asked?
No problem. Yeah, of course you can do so. So you
mobile apps, right?
Apple being one of the good examples. So Apple OS definitely for sure.
Yeah. And I think because I'm researching on design systems right now, right, there are certain design systems that are CAWG compliant. And I think Salesforce Lightning is one of them. So I'm actually trying to look at how they design their components and how they select their colors in order to make it CAWG compliant. I think it's very interesting. Yeah, I think accessibility itself as a topic is something that's not governed enough. Yeah, and CAWG is just one of those guidelines and organizations that comes up with like guidelines to kind of govern it. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think that there needs to be some standards, and obviously it needs to be thought through. And obviously, people need to hold other people accountable, whether
Yeah.
whether it's meeting those standards or it's failing those standards. So it makes perfect sense. And you're right. I think most of the time we design for more able people. You also mentioned you're someone who champions diversity, and I noticed in your Zoom background today, you have this very colorful Zoom background with the hashtag Pride. Can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit more what this means and why is it important to you?
Right. So I'm actually wearing my Proud Spaces shirt, by the way, yeah, for the event. And I think inclusivity for me is important. Diversity in the sense is important. And I have this rainbow background because it's nearing June, and June is Pride Month. Yeah, so happy Pride Month, everybody, in advance. I think for me, I do identify as a queer lady. Yeah, so LGBT rights is very important for me. And therefore, any chance that I get to champion that, I will. And I think it really stems from, again, a childhood, or rather an experience that I had when I was young, where, you know, you are basically with your partner at a bus stop, holding hands, and then somebody who light up on the bus yelled and say that, says nasty things to us. And then when I think when you're like 15 or 16, you're wondering if you're doing something wrong. And I think that scars you in that sense. And growing up, you realize that, hey, there's nothing wrong with that. You just need to embrace who you are. And if people don't agree with that, then that's on them, right? So advocating for LGBT rights is something that I'm passionate about, just because it's very personal. And I think for me, how I try to advocate it is I try to run events. I try to educate people on why certain policies are important. And I was very fortunate because the first tech company that I joined was Chope. And the leaders at Chope, Arif and Dinesh, kudos to you guys. They led by example. They are very, very inclusive people, and it translates into HR policy. And it was the first time hearing that marriage leave also extended to same-sex couples. And that for me was eye-opening. And that for me indicates that changes can be made for progress. Yeah, so I think when I was there, because there was a very supportive group as well, when it was in 2018, and I think Pink Dot Singapore was running their 10th anniversary, they were asking for proposal from various avenues or to run like events to celebrate their 10th anniversary. And I remember going to my HR manager, Joshua, and then telling him that, hey, there's such an initiative, would Chope be interested to take part? And he was really spontaneous about it. And he said, yeah, let's brainstorm on an idea. And I think within like 3 hours, we had that idea nailed down. And we were going to run a kind of a career fair to showcase inclusive companies, and in particular local ones. Because I think there's a whole notion of how only foreign companies or big MNCs are inclusive, but they don't see that there are companies like Chope. There's companies like the Lo and Behold group that are very passionate about driving diversity, and they are very inclusive places to work at as well. Yeah, so that was a very eye-opening like experience for me to actually organize it. And on a very tight budget. We only had like $1,500.
Wow. And thank you so much for sharing that. I don't ever
No problem.
recall or hearing you identify yourself as queer, and I think that really helps me understand why this topic is so important to you as well. And how is it like as a queer person, you know, trying to apply for a role or job in Singapore, where it's actually quite traditional, and people, you know, like they make their own judgments about this group of people. So like, where do you actually start telling your employers, hey, or do you even tell your employers like, I identify as this, like, is that okay, right? Yeah.
So I think to answer that, right, I do look and gauge the energy of the person before I open up. Yeah, and especially when it concerns my career. So when I was considering the job at OCBC, it actually took me a while because I was wondering if I should be even joining them, because it's a very conservative bank, right? I think in fact it's one of Singapore's like most conservative banks. But when I started speaking to the people there, they were really nice about it, and they were really empathetic, a really nice group of people, and the energy was good. So I decided to go on board. And I think eventually, so I didn't tell my boss, but I did open up to my peers within the journeys team. Yeah, so there's different teams, and I was in the journeys team helping to craft user journeys, and they were all very receptive to it. They were all very accepting, so that was a huge relief for me. But back on the topic of trying to find a job, right, and being a queer person trying to break into the industry, trying to find a job, I have been to an interview where I mentioned that my partner was female, and then I got a weird reaction from the interviewers, and they start saying things like, oh, that's interesting, and then they start laughing about it. So I mean, obviously I didn't take that job lah, but I mean, it got me thinking about how you are still different, right, even though we are still progressing in the right direction. And therefore I do choose to be a little bit careful about who I tell. I'm very open. So, but when it comes to job, I tend to gauge whether you're okay with it or not, because I also don't want to put you in a position where you're uncomfortable to have that conversation with me. Yeah. So I think what is really helpful for me as a queer person is that the other party initiates the conversation first. Yeah. So if you ask me if I'm attached, I'm very open. I'm very happy to actually let you know. And then if you do ask about like my partner's gender, I'm very willing to share. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, by the way. And I think this is also very inspiring for people who might identify themselves as queer and might be a little hesitant to be honest, truthful during the interview process. I think your story and your example would really help them. So it's kind of like a vibe check, and you do be truthful in the end, and that's something that you don't hide from your potential employers, right?
Yeah, I think it pays to be truthful at an interview, because you get to see the other side of the interviewers as well, right? If there's somebody that is jeering at you for being queer, would you really want to join a company? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And can you tell us, so you're wearing this t-shirt, and can you tell us more about what you mentioned, Proud Spaces, right? Like what is it about? I know you started this project in 2018, so tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's really to showcase companies that are champions of diversity and inclusion as well. So initially we wanted to just bring local companies on board, but I mean, it was really hard to find within that really short period of time. So we kind of leverage on the Chope network, right? So you see groups like, you see companies like Lo and Behold Group coming on board because they are a restaurant group, they're on Chope. Yeah, and obviously when we start kicking off that event, we do reach out to partners first. Yeah, so they were one of those that came on board. We do then reached out to bigger companies because that was a strategy that we were going for. We feel that with the bigger companies on board as an anchor, smaller companies would then want to be more keen to come on board. Yeah, so my sister was working at Airbnb, so I took that as a leverage, and I asked her to connect me with their diversity champion. Yeah, so then like moving forward, we had a conversation, and then they were really happy to come on board. Yeah, and I was really happy to have them to come on board, because the moment Airbnb was on board, I had Salesforce coming on board. I had like 99.co who wants to come on board. Yeah, so we have like a huge range of companies. We even have like really small, like one man or like really small setup companies. Yeah, small setup. Like there was a lady, I think her name was Eileen, and she was running like a gym, and she was a personal trainer, and she wanted to just come on board as well. Yeah, so I think we did set up a booth for her. Yeah, so that was getting people to come on board. And then because we have to work on a very tight budget of like $1,500, right? We needed a event space because the Chope office was not big enough. Then I think we were renting out of WeWork at Purvis. I think it was Purvis or Seah Street.
Yeah.
And so I think WeWork is one of the more well-known companies that champion diversity as well. So we just basically one day decide to approach them and just ask them, hey, we are here already. We are running this event. Are you interested to join us? And then I think there was a bit of negotiation because they said that on Saturdays, their place is open for those that have rented to them until like afternoon. And then usually in afternoon, they are more empty and therefore they are willing to actually let us have the space. And we just told them, yeah, we'll take it. and that's the story behind the event space. And I think additionally for publicity, we had Pink Dot, so we didn't have to worry about it. They have a very wide pool of users. They have their, their own like social media person, Ching, that did us a lot of favor about advertising our event. So that was that. Yeah.
That's really awesome. And are you looking to do something again this year with everything opening up? Because the last 2 years, everything's closed.
Right. So actually, Proud Spaces continued to run in 2019, and then I was really happy with the outcome of 2019 because we had companies like Visa, Mastercard, and Johnson's & Johnson's coming on board. So that for me was an accomplishment, to be very honest, because you start something really small, you seed something really small, thinking that it's going to be just one event and that's it, right? But Chope, even though I was not with the company anymore, they decide to take it and run with it still, and then bringing all these like really big companies on board, and we have really good speakers that came and gave like fireside chats and stuff. I think that said, I think 2020 when COVID hit, they decided to lower the scale of it. So it was more like a fireside online chat, about how restaurants and F&B industry can benefit from diversity. And I think 2021, I can't recall whether anything was done this year. Sorry.
I actually see that being held. In fact, I'm looking at the Ping Fest website right now.
Right.
And it looks like Dinesh is the moderator for Proud Spaces. So it looks like Chope is your ex-company is anchoring it during the event.
Great.
So it looks like you definitely left a mark over there.
Yeah, and I think it won't be possible without the leaders there being role models. I think they really do practice what they preach, and that's what I really, really liked about Chope. Every day when I was at Chope, every day was like going to work was like going back to family. And so that was really enjoyable.
This is like the employee branding ever.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to promote OCBC, but yeah, not promote.
I think OCBC is a little bit tricky because it's a bigger organization and they do have their own like employees branding, right?
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately they're at a stage where they are still not ready to open up. I'm pretty sure, and I'm pretty confident that in future when things get more progressive, they will, but it's just not the right time. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, like back to the question in 2022, are you gonna do anything for 2022 for Proud Space?
So I don't think so because actually Pink Dot is happening next month. I already saw the whole like event list. And yeah, I think unfortunately I don't have the bandwidth to actually take part this year. Maybe next year, I am actually thinking of connecting back with my HR manager because we're really good friends, right? And perhaps we'll put together something for 2023.
Can I just give an idea? Because I didn't actually mean for this to be announced. we are looking to do some kind of like career fair and
right.
The school. So if you like, we'll be more than happy to like collaborate with you and see if there's anything we can work together on. Because we are gonna set aside some marketing dollars to it as well. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Happy to have a chat after this session.
Yeah, that sounds good. Like I never thought of it. But it's interesting because I'm hearing many of these things for the first time, and this is also like really new to me. And I'm just wondering, like, you know, I think talking about diversity, you're also one of the few women in tech, right? Because talking about tech field being predominantly male dominated, how do you think we could you know, get more women to be interested in the tech industry and to be like here designing great products with us? Yeah.
I think the tech industry is progressing in the right direction. If we are looking at product design in particular, I think product design is actually having its moment right now, right? I think design in general is having its moment right now, where the spotlight is on how we can use design as a problem-solving tool. I think to get more females into tech, I don't think the issue is in female not being interested in tech. I think it's just that they're there, but they're not getting enough visibility. So I think if you are a lady in tech, right, there's always a lot of groups to join to actually be a bit more visible. I think ADP list as well is one of the places where you can go and say that, hey, you know, I'm a leader in tech. I can actually have, my feedback is different from somebody who is predominantly male in a male industry. And I can then craft, like I can give you advice that is crafted to your needs. And I think when I'm saying that, I'm coming from a perspective of you are a female student or mentee who wants support in that sense. Yeah.
Are you also like a mentor on ADP list, or?
No, I actually haven't signed up for it. I did consider, but I think maybe when I have a little bit more bandwidth, just to be fair to like the mentees out there. Yeah.
Oh, well, I know some of our students who then went on to join like really prominent companies. They just decided to give back some of their time back to the next generation, which is really great. And I'm also wondering, like, you talk about being a UX designer, and you've worked with very different companies of very different sizes, from startups to like MNCs. Would you want to share a little bit about the difference, especially to our audience here, some of them aspiring designers? Like, what's the difference between working for a startup versus working for like a bigger MNC, like a OCBC, maybe like an OCBC bank, right? Also. Right.
I think one of the biggest difference for me was speed. Yeah, I think when I started my job in startups, usually I'm already working on the project in my first week. But when I was in OCBC, the onboarding process itself was like 2 weeks, and there's a very good reason behind it, right? Because they're such a huge company that they need you to be aligned to certain things. So I remember for my first week there, I was spending almost every day just completing online lessons, like online courses. Yeah, so there was courses on like anti-money laundering, etc., that you have to go through in order to be part of OCBC.
Finance too.
Yeah, exactly. So you would understand. And so that is really one of the biggest difference for me, speed. I think scope as well, right? So if you're in a big company, there's basically a wider product suite. So if we take OCBC, for example, you have your premier banking, you know, online banking, offline banking, merchant banking, and you have like maybe things like digital wealth where I was sitting. And then a smaller company usually don't have that many product pillars, right? Usually it's one single product and then like different modules under it. So scope is very different because in a smaller company, you have the luxury to see things end to end. Yeah, so you from basically, you may be involved in a project that is in discovery phase. You help to find the problem to solve and then craft the solution all the way to the delivery of the solution, which is that the whole double diamond framework that you learn in school a lot. Whereas in OCBC, you still use like the double diamond framework, but it's really condensed into on a project scale, right? That is slightly smaller. Usually it doesn't involve like discovery. Usually it's more like usability and how you can make things or how you can iterate things better. So I think that's important as well, because if you're thinking of joining a larger company, bear in mind that you probably won't be learning end to end. You will probably be quite focused into that particular project that you're on. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thanks for sharing about that. And I can definitely echo and attest to the fact that bigger companies are slower. And also more traditional companies are also slower, right? Because naturally the product design infrastructure hasn't been built, and there's no cadence or rhythm to doing projects at a certain speed. And I was just wondering, you're talking about OCBC Bank, you know, what are some of the things that you're able to share with us that you're excited about working on the UX team or the journeys team, as you mentioned?
Right. So I think when I was there, I joined at a junction where the team was scaling very fast, and then there wasn't framework in place yet. So the team was just one very flat hierarchy. And then I think about 3 months in, they start breaking it into teams. And I think I'm very fortunate to have been placed in the journeys team, because the journeys team was all about discovery research and all about crafting user journeys. And I think that really opened up the whole scope of the whole scope of service design for me. And I start seeing how UX fits into service design, and how it's really important for, I would say, every designer to know about service design, because I think that's your mothership. Like, if you're looking at, like, you know, UX as a really small like spaceship, I think service design is your mothership. And I start being quite aware about how the user discover your product. So from the emotions that they feel, right? So everyday things that they do, things like they wake up and they don't get that coffee, the coffee machine breakdown, that's already a negative emotion. And then how it translates through the day and how it influences the way they use your app. And I think I recall my mentor in OCBC always say, right, so there's 24 hours in a day, but the customer can only be on our app, you know, maybe on our app for only 5 minutes, but in that 5 minutes, you can actually create joy for that person. Yeah, and I think that really resonates a lot, right? So how do you make that 5 minutes delightful for that person? By truly understanding what they're going through. So I think one of the things that was discovered was why people do not want to use our like pay anyone app. And I think the insight was that it was really, really slow. And so you imagine somebody who is trying to pay for like mee pok, right? So now they accept pay anyone at coffee shop, and you want to pay for like mee pok at the mee pok store.
For some context, the
yes.
pay now is a cashless kind of transaction.
Yes.
QR based, you know, thing. So yeah, mee pok is like a very classic street food in Singapore, where you have fish balls inside. So yeah, go on.
Yeah, so sorry, that's not very inclusive of me, but thanks a lot, Dylan.
No worries about it.
Yeah, so imagine somebody who is rushing, right, rush hour, lunch hour, trying to buy a bowl of like fishball noodles, bracket mee pok at the hawker store, and they are opening our app to pay, and it's taking like a minute to load. And there's a long queue at the back. How do you think she feels, right? How do you think he or she feels? It's going to make her feel really frustrated, really embarrassed. So these are the negative emotions that we try to sieve out. And therefore, it translates to the next time they use your app, which is there's a fear that, you know, they're going to hold up the line, and therefore they might switch to a faster platform. Yeah, so I think these are really lessons that I took from OCBC that would really stay with me for really long. Yeah.
So when you say you're a journeys team and you do the research and you discover that this is a blocker, what do you then do next, right? As a UX design team, how do you then pass it to the rest of the design team to execute on? Yeah.
So I think how OCBC functions is that there's the journeys team that is in charge of research and usually conducting of the interviews and crafting of the user journey. And I think working parallel to us is the UI UX designer, or we call them interface designers, where they are working strictly on the digital experiences. And with that is the PM and engineers. So what we usually do is that when we're conducting the interview, the discovery interview, we invite those people, those stakeholders as we call them, to always sit in and do the transcribing of verbatims. Yeah, so then it's easier to show than tell, right? So we show you how we conduct the interview. So we are conducting the interview and you're there and you're actually listening to the findings from the horse's mouth. And you know that we won't be any, you know that nothing will be lost in translation because they're there to listen to the insights themselves. Yeah, findings themselves, sorry, not insights. Yeah, and so what happens is that after a certain insight has been found, the UI UX designer will usually work with us to craft the user journey. So that's when the design sprint happens, right? So your crazy eights, your mapping, the seating field do, everything comes out. And then once that is done, we do prototype testing as well. So we move from discovery phase to deliver phase. And that's when we test the prototype in labs again. And once we are satisfied with the testing, then we'll move ahead with development. Yeah, so in general, that's how OCBC works.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, it's nice to see how it works in a larger and more developed team. Personally, I'm aware that among the banking industry, DBS has one of the largest UX design teams, and OCBC is not too far behind. I mean, OCBC, DBS were one of the earliest banks in Singapore that started investing in UX design, right? And really tried to drive that change organization-wide. And they have come such a long way to be an organization that is mature in terms of the UX design practices. So tell me a little bit more like how, because you've been a designer for a while. Tell me a little bit more how does data play a role in your work?
Right. I think when we talk about data, it's about defining what kind of data. So I personally feel that data matters, but it also doesn't matter. And there's a reason why I say that, right? So let's look at quantitative data as a base, right? And what it translates for us. It tells you, so if you're collecting data on your website, for example, it's telling you what the user is doing, where they are going, where they're dropping off. But I think what is lacking is that insight behind that behavior and why the user is dropping off at a certain page. Yeah, so I'll give you an example about, say, an online furniture shop, right? E-commerce furniture shop, and people are actually adding items to their cart, but they're not checking out. Yeah, so people are not converting in that sense. And I think the question here is why are they not converting, right? There's a lot of speculations there. And one of the speculation could be that, the checkout process is very lengthy. So maybe let's just reduce it to 3 clicks. So that could be a solution. That could be a possible solution. But I think if you do speak to the user and understand why, it could be that they are just using the cart as a bookmark feature. So they don't want to, maybe there's like 1,000 items on your website, right? And they can't find a bookmark feature for one. Adding to cart is easier. So therefore they add to cart so that they can find it easier.
You don't want to register, right? So
yeah, exactly.
That's what I do with Amazon, actually. I just use the Amazon.
That's what I do on Shopee.
Yeah, I always do that.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's always about quant and qual working together and how it produces a piece of evidence that will give you an insight. And I think it's important when we're reporting data to always list out that quantitatively these are the numbers, but qualitatively this is what the customers are saying, and then kind of triangulate the both, right, and try to come up with that why and come up with the best solution that will work around that. I think that's it. I would say that qualitative data alone, it's important, but it may not be substantial enough if you're only interviewing a few people, like if your user pool or your user interviews are too little. And I think one of the examples is, and this is not OCBC or any other companies that I've worked at, but I've heard this example from a friend before that if that someone says that the checkout is too tedious. Yeah, but data shows that people are checking out normally. So if it's just one user saying that the checkout is too tedious, but you have data from 1,000 people saying that checkout is actually all right, and they're actually rating it on the SUS scale of a system usability scale of say 4.5, would you be listening to that one person? Yeah, so I think there's always, you always have to come in from a neutral mindset, right? And balance out your data in that sense. Yeah, so qual and quant and how it should work together.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I always tell students that, you know, like what people do is a behavior, right? And what people say is an attitude, right? So you always need a complete picture by actually finding about the attitudes and behaviors of the users. So, that's always been something, and I think using cross-referencing from different data sources also helps you to verify whether your hypothesis, as you mentioned, is correct. That's really meaningful. And I think this is also interesting as a follow-up question. I wanted to know, like, you're now considered a senior UX designer, right? You've been in your career for a while. For people who are growing in their careers, right? This is maybe their first or second year in their careers. What advice would you like to give them, like as they are kind of starting their first year, or they're kind of like growing into their second year and beyond? Do you wish you would have done anything differently or learn anything before you know, like becoming a more senior UX designer?
Yeah, I think also I'll relate my personal experience. I deliberately switched to UX because I was interested in design, measurable design in that sense. And I think I was fortunate enough because my friend's company was looking for a junior role. And so I took the chance and I went in there. It was, the first 6 months for me was hell, like, to be very honest. I think a lot of time I was trying to figure things out on my own. I was trying to understand what a design system is, what's the difference between that and design library, you know, and basically on top of that is about how certain softwares work, right? How do you create components or nested symbols in Sketch? That time I was still using Sketch. So there's a lot of things happening then. It was quite overwhelming. And I think it's about grit, right? Like GRIT. If you like something enough, you will have the grit to go through with it. Yeah, but that said, right, always learn to look at the positive side of things and have fun. So I think that's really for the younger designers out there, or those that are starting out their careers, because the whole journey is not going to be like, wow, up all the way, you know. You're gonna face like situations whereby you have to dig into like a lot of dirty quant data and then come out with that insights or build up a research plan all on your own. Yeah, so learn to enjoy the journey and always learn to give yourself enough credit, which is something that I also don't do often, because you are always your worst like critic, right, as they always say. I think for people who are in their second year and looking to grow in UX, I think what I was looking for when I reached my second year mark was a mentor. And I have been reading articles, I've been watching like TED Talks, and I realized that, so I'm a big fan of TED Talks, by the way. Yeah, and I realized that having that mentor that will guide you along and having that community that you can fall back on is very important. And I think, Dylan, that was when I found you because I was looking for a lot of resources online, and I signed up for Interactive Design Foundation, I think Foundation, where it was, so it's a like e-learning platform. You sign up, you get access to their courses, and I realized that in Singapore, CuriousCore was the anchor community. So again, being very curious, I went to your site and I realized that, hey, you know, maybe I should be enrolling this program to connect with more people. And I think that was what I did, and, you know, no regrets, because I made friends and I worked on really good projects. And I think that really opened up a lot of doors. I think I'm still in touch with some of my batchmates, right? I think Gabe, I see a Gabe in the audience. I don't know whether it's Gabriel. Yeah. And then like Si Ying, and my team that worked on that worked with me on like Banyan Tree and Asia. One of them, Steve, I think he's still in Malaysia, but we're still in touch on Telegram. So really, really happy to have found this group of people.
Yeah, thank you for bringing your experience and enriching the learning experience for everyone as well. I'm sure a lot of them learned a lot from you, and as I remember, you've always had glowing reviews as a as a so yeah, I think that's really great, and something about that along those lines as well. Do you think it's more important to improve your communication skills and leadership skills as you grow and into becoming a senior UX designer? Yeah.
I think more importantly is about looking at your UX trajectory and how you want it to pan out. Communication is always important, and I think recently I've been contemplating taking up an improv course because I'm not very good at improvisation myself. Yeah, and I've always wanted to learn how people can do that on the spot. And I think that will also help with, public speaking. So I'm actually looking at certain improv courses that I can take. So communication is definitely key. But back to UX trajectory, right? So there's basically a few paths to take, right? So you can be a generalist, you can specialize, or you can maybe branch out to be a manager, which is a scope that I'm trying to explore right now. I think as a generalist, is also looking at upskilling complementary skills, right? So animation has always been looked upon as a complementary skill. Maybe you will want to do that. Specialization, for example, could be taking up I'm not sure, research certification with NN Group, for example. Yeah, so really looking at where you want to go and then charting that and getting the qualification or skills to reach there. I think that would be quite important.
Yeah, so it sounds like it depends on what you want to specialize, whether you want to be an individual contributor or a team leader or people manager. And based on that, you try and acquire what's the missing skills gap. I'm wondering right now, someone from Hong Kong is asking me like, how would you rate the prospects of being in the UX sector in the coming years? I mean,
prospects.
Yeah, you can comment like from a Singapore perspective, but this question came from someone in Hong Kong. Yeah.
Right. How would you define prospects? Is it
like is it promising? Is it looking good? Is it looking bad? Is it, I don't know, like what are your perspectives on joining the UX sector as
Right. I think I mentioned earlier, I think design is having its moment right now. So it's definitely a booming industry. And I think with booming industry also comes an influx of designers who are trying to get into the industry. So I think the market is going to get a little bit more saturated, a little bit more competitive. But if you're talking about prospects and how that will help you grow, in Singapore in particular, I think it's a great place to start your UX career. I think Singapore has always been looked upon as a base for APAC, so Asia Pacific region. And a lot of companies are setting up HQ here. So we do have like big names like Airbnb, we have Facebook, and we have our local unicorn, which is Grab. And I think these are all great places to start looking for jobs because they're always hiring. And I think now the Singapore market is actually facing a talent crunch. So if you are inspiring, I think it's actually a pretty good time to go out there and try to get into the industry. Yeah.
I think I echo that sentiment. I mean, it might seem it has been several years since we've been like teaching UX and all that, but I think the fact is that the industry is actually growing, right? The tech industry is still growing. There's so much more venture capital going into the tech industry, and of course they need to hire builders, right? And UX designers are definitely builders together with the engineers itself. And he was asking career advice as well, and he's wondering like how to enrich my exposure to the UX area, right? Like how should I enrich my exposure? I guess he's trying to get a job or trying to get into the industry. Yeah.
I think network is very important. And I think that was part of the reason why I was looking for a community. So I think I do make an effort to keep in touch with my past product designer friends, you know, just because you never know, they might come to you with job opportunities and say like, hey, do you want to join me in my company? I'm actually looking to hire. And that has happened to me before. So, and it's not just product design, right? Your HR managers, your PMs, your marketing people, they are all potential routes that will open doors for you. And that's when the whole people management skills or people relationship management skills come into play. I think career advice on how to broaden UX perspective, try to go out and join UX events, because now, I mean, the market is opening already, right? So there are opportunities for you to actually meet people face to face, and there's a bit of personal touch there when you get to meet people face to face. So I feel that it's a little bit more personable as well. Other than that, there's always plenty of online webinars like this one that you're holding, Dylan. Yeah, so they're a great place to learn and, you know, just network with people. So I think for me, when I was a little more junior, I do make an effort to join webinars, and then I'll look at the people that are there, those that comment or speak, and I try to connect with them later on LinkedIn. So I've actually reached out to a few and say like, hey, I really like the topic that you brought up earlier. I just want to stay connected with you on LinkedIn, because by staying connected, I get to see what they post about, you know, I get to see what they comment about. So that will give me perspective into the future, or basically a topic as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you have any particular tips if, let's say, people are trying to network, they're kind of like in a job hunt phase? Like, do you have any tips to not be too creepy when you're reaching out to people or employers, especially if it's not a warm connection? Like, how do you network in a non-creepy? Yeah.
I think it's about being genuine. And I think if you look at the human to human interaction, face-to-face interaction, right? I think being genuine is about listening to what they need, or just being able to just understand what they want at that point in time. And if you're actually looking to join a company, knowing that they have an opening and you know that the HR person is within your circle of friends, right? Why not do a mini case study on how you can improve their product for them and, you know, send it across? So I think there's this really famous story about a student actually, a fresh grad who did a whole revamp of the DBS app.
Yeah.
And then DBS got wind of that and he got hired by DBS. Yeah, so I think that's a non-creepy way of trying to get the company's attention. Yeah.
Yeah, that's certainly one of those things that that is a little surprising. Not sure if it works all the time, but I mean, no harm giving it a try in one way or the other. When you're, I'm not sure if you're mentoring anyone at the moment. Like, do you get requests from people who are like, hey, please help me get a job here, or like, yeah, I want to join OCBC, can you refer me in? Like, how do you think they should reach out to you to sort of like help them with the introduction? I'm sure you got some requests, and maybe some of them are very poorly written. Like, yeah, do you want to share what are those?
I think there were a few of my batchmates that reached out to me to ask if I could refer them in, and I did. But I think it's about the whole narrative of why you want to join the company, and how your portfolio is relevant to the position that you're applying for. So I think for OCBC, because it's a customer experience team, it's not exactly UX. So if your portfolio is predominantly UX related items and you're not talking about the discovery phase or user journey phase, I think it's unlikely that they're going to actually consider you. So I think it's always about coming back to context, right? What is the company looking for? Try to craft that narrative to suit that. And then that will actually increase your chances of getting the interview. Yeah.
Should they buy you coffee or anything like that before signing your
No.
request?
So I don't drink coffee, fun fact. I'm actually a tea drinker. But I'm actually happy to refer you to somebody. So just reach out to me on LinkedIn, like don't be afraid. And I think that's the whole, if you want it, go get it kind of mindset that I think a lot of people like. Because you kind of show that you're a hustler, right? If there's a will, there's a way. And I think that's something that's quite admirable. It takes a bit of courage to do that. Don't be afraid to reach out to people that you know will get you there. Yeah.
Well, a wise man once said, like, you miss 100% of the calls you don't take.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
that's a good one. I was wondering, like, is there anything you would like to cover, or is there any like advice, because we're kind of nearing the end of the session itself? Yeah.
I think because the topic is on inclusive design, right? I just want to share a little bit more about that and about how we should be building for the ages. So I recently was again watching TED Talk, I think, or one of the UX webinars, because I let it run when I'm doing my work. And I think one of the inclusivity champion, I think his name is Samuel Pollocks or something. He mentioned something about how if you build for the edges, you get the middle for free. And I think that really made me
build for the edges, you get the middle for free.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it has been true, right? If you look at history, so I think a lot of the things that are universally designed are designed with a problem from a smaller group of people. So the bendable straws, for example, those straws with the little bendy tips, they are built for, I think, patients with Alzheimer's, with trouble bending their fingers, for example. Sliding doors, automatic doors are built for people that are on wheelchair, but they are used so widely right now. And I think GPS was traditionally built for people with sighted issues like visual impairment. So I think if there's anything that I would like to leave you with is to always think about the edges. Never leave your edge case open so never leave your edge case unattended. Yeah, I think that's a better way of putting it.
Excellent. I think that's really, really wonderful advice. And with that, I think we shall leave the audience over here. And thank you for your time and your presence, and of course, sharing all your stories and telling us your experiences as a queer person trying to practice UX design and trying to design for inclusivity and diversity, and truly being practicing what you preach as a UX ally, as you say, like with a double L with 1
yes.
Which is the code. What's the code again? I don't quite. What?
It's a A11Y.
Yeah. So what does 11 mean? 11 means accessibility.
Yeah, I think it's just a condensation or like a code, right? So code is 1 and 0. So they actually use like double L. Yeah.
That's wonderful, and I love that. I'm learning new things as well as I'm listening to you speak tonight. And it's really great to have you back as an alumnus. Hopefully we'll get to do some collaborations in the coming years. And we'll definitely keep in touch. And it's very nice of your batchmates to come and join us. So feel free to release some reaction buttons if you're here and all that. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. And I think someone just said heard it's 11 letters for accessibility.
Okay, then that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Sherry.
All right. Thank you, Sherry. And with that, thank you everyone for coming and joining us for this live webinar session.